yesterday, we're on Daf. We reached Daf Samach, page 60, side A. But what I'm thinking of doing is let's start again and go over the Gemara from yesterday. It was a little complicated because there was different versions, two versions of the Gemara. The Gemara brought down two ways of explaining this argument. So we also left off yesterday with a lot of questions regarding the bracha of Shehechiyanu, and there are a lot of arguments. I have to be honest. There is a lot of arguments among the commentaries as to the obligation of the bracha of Shehechiyanu, and when or are there different cases? Certain cases it's more obligated. Are you allowed to say it if you feel excited, or does it need to be something that everyone is excited over to say the bracha Shehechiyanu? So there seems to be a lot of discussion about the bracha of Shehechiyanu. So we're going to try to go through it from the Gemara, from the original sources, and then we'll try to see how it develops into Shulchan Aruch, and then how it develops into practical halacha. Because as we saw yesterday, there seems to be a big it seems to be a movement of not reciting Shehechiyanu, even though in Shulchan Aruch it mentions it. And one example is Shulchan Aruch mentions about a talus, and from my understanding, people generally don't recite a Shehechiyanu when they have a talus, when they get a new talus, or when you get a new suit. I don't know that people say Shehechiyanu when they buy a new suit. So it seems to be a bracha that's not so popular, at least in the practical side of things. So what we're seeing in the Gemara is at least the origin of where the bracha Shehechiyanu was meant. It was meant to be. Now, I will just add one thought, and that is, it's not my own thought. It's brought down in Sfarim, brought down in the commentaries, that because a person needs to feel excited in order to recite the bracha Shehechiyanu, so it's hard for us to evaluate, to measure the level of excitement, and is it enough for us to say the Shehechiyanu? And again, you bought a new suit. How excited are you? So from between a scale from 1 to 10, how excited are you when you bought this new suit? So we might be a 5. In the olden days when they bought a new suit, they were like going. There it was beyond a 10 when they bought a new piece of clothing. But for us, it's not easy for us to say, we're happy, go bought a new suit, but is that enough to recite Shehechiyanu? Because of this issue of being hard to evaluate, if we are excited enough, that would be a reason why people are lenient with the bracha Shehechiyanu. I don't know if the word lenient would be right, but the people are afraid to say Shehechiyanu because we might not really be the level of simcha, of joy, that we need to be to say the bracha Shehechiyanu. So again, there are ideas here of Shehechiyanu being connected to to your joy, if you're excited over it. But then comes the question is, what level of joy do you need? And that's where it's hard to measure, and therefore people sort of let go of this bracha Shehechiyanu.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Rob, oh.
1 second. Robert has his hand up. Yes, Robert.
What I'm understanding is that with times changing, the significance of saying the Shehechiyanu, again, how much joy if you get another suit versus it may be, the second in a lifetime. So there's this sort of an organic activity that's gone on to say, how auspicious is it to say the Shehechiyanu if it's just sort of a matter of fact, because you don't have that heightened joy for doing a Shehechiyanu?
Right, or the heightened joy for what you receive, for
right,
whatever
exactly.
new
It's
thing
sort of,
you're having.
right, let's say run of the mill. It's
Right,
nothing new. Okay.
right. So that's what really we're going to be dealing with when we take these laws into the practical side of things. Yes, Moshe, you had a question, I think.
Yes, I have a sofer checking my tefillin now. Okay,
Yeah.
he's going to. I think he's going to replace the straps, and he's going to check the parchment. Okay, so when I get it, of course, I'm going to be excited about it because it's going to be fresh and ready to use again. Do I say a shechianu again for that, or I mean?
I don't believe so, for a few reasons, but we sort of clarified yesterday that you don't say a shachianu on besides the fact that you owned it already and it's just a new strap, and it's not like you're getting new tefillin. But even if you did get new tefillin, there's another issue, and that is that it's leather, so people don't say shachianu on leather. So there are various reasons why you wouldn't say a shachianu. David had brought up yesterday, when a child starts putting on tefillin, does he say shachianu? And I saw in the Lubavitcher Rebbe brings in, he connects it to when a girl starts lighting Shabbos candles. Looks like we got some noise here. 1 second. Okay, so the question was, should children say shachianu when they start, little girls that light Shabbos candles, which is something the Lubavitcher Rebbe encouraged, that a girl should light Shabbos candles from very young, based on the fact that we see in the story of Rebecca, who married Yitzchok. Yitzchok chose to marry her because her candle stayed lit from Shabbos to Shabbos, and she was only 3 years old. So the Rebbe said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, you see that even a 3-year-old was lighting Shabbos candles. So the Rebbe encouraged that people should. It used to be a minhag, and it seems like it had stopped for a while. So the Rebbe encouraged. You see from the Torah, you see that Rivka lit Shabbos candles, so girls should light Shabbos candles, and the question was, should they recite a shehechiyanu? And the Rebbe brought down that there's a discussion about boys putting tefillin on. Do they say shehechiyanu? And the answer, and the conclusion is that we don't. And so the Rebbe compares it to the lighting the candles, that we seem to be a little careful not to just recite a shehechiyanu if it's not accepted according to the majority of opinions. So that touches upon the tefillin discussion. Let's see. I think Isaac, did you had your hand up first over here? Isaac, did you want to say something? Okay, well then I guess Ben.
Yeah, I brought up yesterday the bar mitzvah with getting a talit and tefillin.
Right.
So maybe the boy is too young to say shehechiyanu. He didn't live that long. But what about the father? What about the father? Should he say, or could he say shehechiyanu that his son got to the day of putting on tefillin and talit?
Right. That's an interesting question. So again, there seems to be some rules of when this bracha shehechiyanu should be recited, and it has to fall within certain categories, and which we'll soon see.
Because I would feel very happy to see my son, get the talit and tefillin and put him on.
It's definitely a moment of excitement there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we don't have this blanket rule that whenever you're excited, you just say the shehechiyanu. In other words, it doesn't say that in Shulchan Aruch. If you're ever excited over a moment, you can just say shehechiyanu.
No, but I feel very thankful when my son done the talit and tefillin.
So you might want to give some tzedakah that day. You might want to study an extra portion of Torah, say some Tehillim, praising Hashem, daven longer.
But the first thing that comes to mind The first thing that comes to mind, Shechianu.
Shechianu.
Yeah.
So, you could say it without Hashem's name.
Right.
A lot of people start their bar mitzvah speeches. It's often a father of a bar mitzvah boy will start his speech. Baruch Shechianu v'kimanu v'giyanu l'zman hazeh. Right? That's how they start their speech. Blessed is Hashem who allowed me to
heard that. I never heard that, but I think it should be.
It's a common way to start. It's an easy way to get right into the speech. Is you say Baruch Shechianu v'kimanu, to give you a little tips for the grandchildren, Ben, for the great grandchildren.
Oh yeah.
You have your speech all set. The beginning part.
Rabbi.
Yes, Moshe.
Also, what about Tzitziot? The same thing? I mean, we do the same thing with that, or what?
Yeah, we mentioned yesterday that tzitzis also, that it doesn't seem, well, I mean, a talis would be more of a reason to say Shechianu, and it does say it in Shulchan Aruch to recite a Shechianu, but I don't believe that the common minhag is to say it. Again, if someone says it, they definitely have what to rely upon for a talis. It says it in Shulchan Aruch, but I think that a lot of people are lenient. I don't know the word lenient. A lot of people are nervous to recite a Shechianu, to recite the Shechianu on clothing.
Reluctant
would be good. Yeah. Okay, that's a good word. Thank you. Yes, Isaac.
The only point I was going to say is something that we brought up before, which is in the Mussar Sfarim and like the Chovos Halavavos, there's a principle of Hatnua Hachitzona Ma'oreres es Hapnimius, which is rather than saying, well, I'm going to psych myself into doing it, the idea is no, do it. And that will get you feeling differently. You want to look, like you were this thing about putting on a hat, put on the hat, and that will change your inside. It doesn't work the other way. Nobody ever gets themselves excited enough to do it. If you start doing it and you deal with it, and it's now with this also, I would say we're sitting here examining how excited am I? Am I excited enough to get to the point of having a chiyuv of Shechianu? I'm only saying it would be interesting to look at it as get yourself more excited. Do you really appreciate this or not? And the bracha should come from within. It shouldn't be such an argument whether or not. That's all. I'm eager to learn the nekudot of all of this, but I'm saying for me it's not. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not probably wrong, but it's not such a big deal because that's all.
So you have a very beautiful point and insight from the Chovos Halavavos, a beautiful connection to this idea of when to say Shechianu and how things that a person does, it clearly does have an effect on their feelings. The thing with Shechianu, it might actually be a beautiful insight. We'll have to see if it fits. There are different brachas of Shechianu that we recite. The bracha of Shechianu on a holiday. There's the bracha Shechianu on new fruits. And there's a bracha Shechianu on new clothing and new utensils. Now, it seems that there are different rules regarding these three brachas of Shechianu. The bracha Shechianu on Yom Tov, which is from time to time. In other words, it's set in a schedule that there's the Yom Tov, that it doesn't happen every day. It happens once, every few months. So, and that's the bracha Shechianu for holidays. Then there's the bracha Shechianu for fruits and vegetables that are mischadesh. From year to year, they grow.
Rebbe, on
yes.
The first Shechianu, that's the one that women make when they're lighting candles, and that men make when they're reciting Kiddush at night.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
So so the second Shachianu that I mentioned was on fruits, and that's when you're excited over this new fruit that that just came into season, and once a year or twice a year, but it's something that's not available. And now it came into season, something that's not in season always. Now it came into season. You would say a bracha shachianu on such a fruit or vegetable. Now the shachianu on clothing or seeing a friend, that's a third category. And the difference is there are differences in law between these three. Or the bracha shachianu on the holiday is considered a choiva. It's considered an obligation, and the other shachianus are more of a reshus, and more of a permissible, but not an obligation.
Rabbi,
And, yes.
I had a couple of things I wanted to say. One was, regarding the level of excitement for a new garment. So you would think from all of these examples, the most exciting would be to get a new tallis at the time of your wedding, because you're not only excited over the tallis, but you're excited over your upcoming wedding connected with the putting on the tallis for the first time. That would seem to be the most exciting from all these clothing examples. The second thing is, I was looking yesterday on Shulchan, there's a website called shulchanorochharav.com, and it's a compendium of things from the Alter Rebbe. So he says, so he tells all the positives and negatives of yes or no to say about Shechianu and a tallis. And then in one of the footnotes, he says that he asked specifically to Rabbi Groner, the Rebbe's secretary, what did the Rebbe hold? And he says that the Rebbe held that in general, we don't say blessings of Shechianu on clothing, and we don't say it on a tallis. And this was told to Rabbi Groner, and he, the author, Rabbi Zalman Goldstein, he heard this from Rabbi Groner personally. He asked, and the Rebbe said, you don't say a bracha shechianu on clothing or on a tallis.
Okay, so how does that differ from what we've said?
No, it's just an additional thing of viewing what the Rebbe held regarding all of this, as far as saying the brachas of shechianu on clothing or on specifically or on a new tallis.
Right. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay.
Rabbi.
Just 1 second. Robert has his hand up. Yes, Robert.
Thank you. You know, should there not be a separate category dealing with shechianu of events in nature? I mean, relative to a new moon, a rainbow, but we also had a discussion that even a negative occurrence gets a shechianu. I think it was a hurricane or an earthquake, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
So the bracha that you're thinking of is not shechianu. There are other brachas that Hashem's power fills the world. Hashem created the creations. You know, when you see the ocean or you see big mountains and things like that. So we did speak about all different types of brachas with regard to, you know, very unique things in nature. But the shechianu bracha is connected to nature as well, and that is the new fruits. That would be the nature part division of the shechianu bracha. In other words, there's the holidays, there's the new suit, and then there's the nature one, which is the new fruits, the fruits that are in season. So that's something that's you know, should be exciting to us, that Hashem you know, he created these trees with beautiful, delicious fruits that are blossoming and they're growing and they're ripened, and so so that would be the shechianu for the new fruits and vegetables. And okay, so
Rebbe, also all these other brachas, Hanenin, or even on different events, are all celebrating things outside of you, in terms of whether it's thunder or lightning or this, or you saw some whatever. all is on the outside events. The Shechiyanu is unique in that it's that he's let you live to be here. You're giving a bracha on your presence at this matter, not, I mean, and typically that's why I think you would make it on food that you eat or kalim that you acquire. But the ones that are relating to the yontif is a whole different shechiyanu, because that applies to, well, okay, whatever. But I just wanted to comment that I think though some brachas focus on the objects, Hashem created this, or he did this, so look how great this is, and the shechiyanu focuses internally. Thank you for letting me be here to eat this, witness this, or whatever it is.
Good point. It is it's a beautiful point about the meaning of the words Shechiyanu, let me live to participate in this Yom Tov, to see this Yom Tov again, to see this fruit. So that's a very very nice point that you're emphasizing, that you're able to live to see this. While for thunder, you say it's more talking about Hashem's power fills the world. Hashem created this, but here it's more that you are part of it. So yeah, a very, very interesting insight, which makes sense why you should be excited in order to or connected to the fact that it's like on a personal excitement. Now,
Rabbi?
Yes,
I just want to mention one thing. What about on Rosh Hashanah, on the Chagim, you buy a talet, which is different from during the regular time of the year. Do you say a special shechianu for that, the talet, because there's a different shechina associated with the Chagim, as opposed to during the regular part of the year? So would you not say a special shechianu for that?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to when you with the
talet for the talet that many people would get. You
mean the kittel for Yom Kippur? Or you mean a talis?
A talis, yeah, talis, okay. or a kittel. I mean, there's a different shechina associated, that time of year. So I would assume that there would be a special bracha that you would say for that, associated with shechianu.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with anyone saying shechianu on their kittel, and I don't know that people buy a new talis for Rosh Hashanah. I mean, but
whatever
anyway, if you want to say it, I think you can. I think you can say it. I mean, it's in Shulchan Aruch to say a bracha shechianu on a talis, say it on a talis. I don't see why not if you want to, and if they bother you in heaven, you could always tell them it says it in Shulchan Aruch. So if you when you go up to heaven and they ask you how you did such a thing, you tell them, listen, Rebbe, it's right there in Shulchan Aruch.
Rebbe, but the question is, there's going to be one malach on the side saying, but was it in Shulchan Aruch Harav? Now, my question is, see, you have that in him. But I would say, no, you already gave a great solution. If you're sitting there, does it bother? It doesn't bother me. If I said Shechiyanu with the same kavana, but I don't say it with the Shem HaMefayrash, I'm fine with that. I'm not investing much. I'm there. I'm saying thank you. I was told by the rabbis not to say your name, Gesundheit, and let's move on.
Right. So anyway, that's the story, Moshe. You have a few options. Thank you, Isaac. So as I was mentioning, so we have these, and I was trying to explain, to connect this with what Isaac said earlier. So because you have these three different types of shechiyanus, and one of them is considered like a more of an obligation, the one for the holidays, maybe that shechiyanu, this might be a good explanation for why that shechiyanu is considered an obligation, because the shechiyanu for the holidays is a shechiyanu where we're trying to get ourselves to feel the holiday. And so reciting the shechiyanu actually will have or should have an effect on us, and therefore it's an obligation in that shechiyanu to really to say it in order to help us get in the mode, to get in that feeling, to get connected, to channel in to the holiday, to the holiness of the holiday. And so I think that's a very nice insight, Isaac, if you want to connect it to these different types of Shachianus, that you could say that, that's the meaning, that's one of the messages of the Shachianu for the holidays, is to bring upon ourselves that feeling, that it's not just that we feel it beforehand, but it actually will help us feel it even if we don't feel it yet. That's an interesting point. We'll have to see if it flows, but that's to see if it fits with the with all the rules. But I think that's a nice insight.
Baruch Hashem, one side's case, so far it's in support. I'll wait till the other side comes later, because it always does. That's the beautiful thing about this. You always learn, no matter how great you put your own case on, it sounds so good and it feels so good. And then you see the other side come in and chop it apart. Right. And you sit there going, oh, Gewalt, who in the world could ever go my way?
Okay, well, stay tuned. We're trying to make it work, Isaac. So we'll might have to tweak it a little. Okay, so
either way, I'm happy either way, because I know it's coming. So it's all good.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's go through the Gemara one more time. We're going to start again on page 59b, bottom 3 lines over there. Quoting the Mishnah, the Mishnah had said, "Bana bayis chadash v'kana kelim chadashim." If a person bought a new house, built a new house. He built a bayis chadash, a new house. V'kana kelim chadashim, or he bought new utensils or new garments. And so the Mishnah had said that in such a case, a person would recite the bracha of Shachiyanu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu zman hazeh. So, so that statement in the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to be discussing regarding what happens if you have one of these items already, and would you recite the bracha if you acquire another such item and you still have the previous item. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, we're 2 lines from the bottom of the page on 59b. Rav Huna says, Lo shanu, we did not learn this law, ela she'ein lo kiyotze bahen, only in a case where you do not have anything, let's say through an inheritance, that's similar to the item that you just bought. Aval yesh lo kiyotze bahen, but if you do have something similar to the item you just that you bought, you have a similar such item, but you inherited it, you didn't buy it, you have it. So ein tzarich levarech, you do not need to recite the bracha of Shachiyanu on the new item that you bought, because you really have a similar such item, and because you have a similar such item already, it's not really that exciting for this new item. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if you have something similar, let's say through an inheritance, and now you bought a new one or another one, tzarich levarech, you do need to recite a bracha shehachiyam. So this is the initial argument, the first version, where we have an argument between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan, that if you have such an item, let's say through an inheritance, would you recite the bracha when you buy it? And of course, the commentaries try to figure out, well, what's the difference if you have it through how you got it? You got it through an inheritance, you bought it once before. Why should there be a difference? Again, the point of the Gemara is that if you bought it once before and now you buy it again, then everyone seems to agree that you would not recite a bracha. And that's what the Gemara spells out now on page 60. Mechlal, from here, this implies the chikana v'chazer v'kana, if a person bought it once before and he still has it, and now he bought another one, v'chazer v'kana, he went back and bought another one, divrei hakoil ein tzarich levarech, everyone would agree, you do not need to recite a bracha shehachiyanu, because the discussion before was only on if a person has it from another source, and there we had an argument if you would recite a shachianu or not. So if a person bought it once before, and now he's buying it again, for sure that's not enough excitement to recite a shachianu. Now, so what is the difference if you got it through an inheritance or if you went and bought it? What is the difference between these two cases? Like, why should it be that if you bought, let's say we're talking about a car, let's say, so you inherited a car and now you bought another car. So your car that you just bought, you would recite a shachianu on, let's say, according to Rabbi Yochanan. You have a car already, but you went and bought another car, so you recite a shachianu according to Rabbi Yochanan on the next car, because the first car you got through an inheritance, the next car you got with your purchase, so therefore you would recite a shachianu. What happens if you bought a car before, you still have that car, now you buy another car, then even Rabbi Yochanan agrees that you do not recite another shachianu. So why is it so exciting only when you buy something and you only had it through an inheritance before, then if you bought it before? In other words, why should there be a difference between these two cases? One scenario was where you inherited it first and now you bought one. The other scenario was where you bought one and now you bought another one. Why should there be a difference between these two cases? So the commentaries say that a person is much more excited when they buy something than when they get it, when it's given to them as a gift, or when they get it without their hard work.
Rabbi?
And when you buy it, you feel much more of an excitement. You feel, I guess, more deserving. You feel that it's yours. You worked for it. So the understanding is that in such a case, you would feel, even though you have one already, but you will feel that that excitement much more than if you had bought one and now you're just buying an extra one. Yes, Moshe.
I see. What I don't understand is vehicles, a car, you would say a shechianu over, because I don't know why you would say it, because it's something that is universal, that anybody can. Now, there's used cars and new cars. If you buy a used car, would you also say shechianu on that? I mean, but to you it's new, but it's a used vehicle. But what about stocks and bonds or something like that? I mean, it can extend to something like that, because I mean, these are things that are not tied with nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. Or things that are used, strictly by Yehudim. I mean, the Goyim use it also. So I don't understand why we would say a shechianu over a vehicle that may be in the hands of a goy, and then it falls in the hands of a Yehudi. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how does this?
Well, the only question, I think you might be really bothered by the fact that a car sometimes is much more of a sentence, almost like a prison sentence sometimes, than a.
But here, let me give you an example.
Than a gift.
Let's make it to Volkswagen. A Volkswagen. Okay, and it's got seats that are made out of, I think that the leather is from Hazir. You know what I'm saying? Right. I mean,
okay. Anyway, Moshe, we're not going to get too far into this, but the point, I just gave an example of a car, but but you have a point. If you're buying a real old broken down type of vehicle that's breaks every few days, and you're just buying it for whatever reason, you're right. I don't know if you would say a shachianu on such a piece of garbage, but when you buy a car that you're enjoying the ride, that would be a reason. Some people really enjoy their car. That would be a reason to say shachianu. But you're right. If you're driving a shmata car, it's more than 15 years old and it's ready to be dumped. That would be. You're right. I don't know that you would say.
What your level of utility is, basically.
Yeah. No, I think you have a point. Okay. So
you might have to bench Gomel on such a car.
Exactly. Or you might be thankful shachianu that when you get rid of it. That might be the. So the Gemara here says that if you bought the car once before, let me mute it.
Life of a boat owner.
I think, I don't know if Isaac, you were talking to us. Did you say like a boat? I think you said like a boat, which some people make a blessing when they get rid of the boat. So okay, the Gemara here said that when you buy a item that you already once bought before and you still have it, everyone agrees you do not recite a Shechianu. But if you inherited it before, then we had an argument between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan if you would recite a Shechianu when you buy another one. Now, if you didn't inherit one before, this is the first time you have it, then of course everyone agrees you say Shechianu because you're buying something that you don't have. You're reciting a Shechianu. But if you inherited one before, there's an argument, Rav Huna, Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, that's the first version. Then the Gemara says, the Ika de Amri, and some say there are those that have another version of this argument. Amar Rav Huna that Rav Huna says that the Mishnah speaks about a case where you buy something and you say Shechianu. So Rav Huna says we didn't learn that only in a case where you didn't buy and you now bought again. But if you did buy and you bought again such an item, then the Mishnah doesn't talk about this case. Ein tzarich levarech, you do not need to recite a bracha according to Rav Huna. But Rabbi Yochanan argues. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if you bought and now you bought again, tzarich levarech, you will need to recite the bracha Shechianu. You once bought one before, you bought a car, you still have it, you're buying another one, you need to recite a Shechianu on the second car. Mechlal, now the Gemara says, so we see an argument between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan when you bought one before and now you're buying another one. Do you say Shechianu or not? What would be in a case where you didn't buy one before, but you inherited one before? So the Gemara seems to imply, the Gemara says it's implied from this brisa that from this statement, this argument, it's implied that it's implied from this discussion of Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan if a person had inherited one before and now they bought another one, everyone would agree that you would need to recite a bracha Shechianu. So again, that's depending on how you learn the argument, then you see what case would everyone agree upon. So if the argument is on a case of first you inherited, then you bought, so then everyone would agree in a case that you bought once before and now you bought again, everyone would agree in that case. If the argument is on a case where you bought before and now you're buying again, then that means that everyone would agree in a case where you inherited before and now you're buying, right? So that, in other words, whatever the argument is on, it'll tell us what would be a case where everyone agrees. The argument is in this case, but that means that the other case everyone would agree upon. So these are the two versions, and based on these two versions, we'll have an understanding of what everyone would agree upon if it's not this case of the argument. So the Gemara says, that if a person inherited and he bought now again, but he never bought before, he inherited before, now he bought it, so everyone would agree that he would need to recite a Shechianu. So that is the two versions. The Gemara now asks a question. Meisvei, the Bnei Yeshiva, asked a contradiction onto this debate, and they brought a case from a brisa. So the earlier arguments were two Amoraim, two rabbis, later rabbis, and the Gemara now is bringing, they asked a contradiction because the rabbis can't really argue on the earlier rabbis, the Tanoim. So the Gemara is going to try to prove which version is the correct version based on the earlier rabbis' from a brisa. So the Meisvei, the Bnei Yeshiva asked the contradiction. Bana bayis chadash. If a person built a new house, ve'in loy ki yotze bay, and he doesn't have anything similar to it, or if he bought new utensils and he doesn't have anything similar to them, tzarich levarich, he would need to recite the Shachianu bracha. Yesh loy ki yotze bahem. What happens if he has items that are similar to these, which means he has it through an inheritance? Let's say he has them. So in such a case, Ein Sarach Levarich, Reb Meir says you would not need to recite a Shachianu because you have them. So if you have them from inheritance and now you bought others, Reb Meir says no Shachianu. Reb Yehuda says Ben kach or ben kach Sarach Levarich, whether you have from before from an inheritance or whether you don't have from before, you do need to recite a Shachianu. Now, the Gemara says this fits very good with the first version. Bishleima l'lishna kama. This goes very good. It's good according to the first version because Rav Huna ki Reb Meir. Rav Huna fits very good with Reb Meir's view because Reb Meir said that if you inherited before and now you bought, you do not recite a bracha. That was exactly what Rav Huna said. And Rabbi Yehuda said you would recite a bracha. That is exactly what Rabbi Yochanan said according to the first version. So this goes very good with the first version because we have these two views were studied and seems to be followed by the later rabbis. So we have it it fits perfectly. They're not doing anything wrong. These later rabbis, they're following their earlier rabbis. One follows one, the other one follows the other, and Rabbi, that seems to fit very perfectly. It seems to be a perfect fit. And let me just finish the wording here. Rabbi Huna Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yochanan fits perfectly with Rabbi Yehuda. Yes, David.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if when they're talking about kalim vessels, does Rashi or does anybody define what they mean by kalim vessels? Is there minimums or is there maximums? Any definitions of what it means?
Yeah, so there's a Tosfos that we're going to talk about, Tosfos on page 59b, which discusses a little what level of does it mean new? Does it mean could they be used? Does it only something that's chashuv, something important, something not so important? So we mentioned it yesterday, but I will go over it soon if we have the time. Okay, so the Gemara says, but what about the second version? That doesn't seem to fit with this brisa of the earlier rabbis. We're now about 12 lines down from the top of the page on 60a. Ela Lishna Basra, but the later version, that doesn't seem to flow. It fits with Rav Huna, but it won't fit with Rabbi Yochanan. Bishleima Rav Huna to Rabbi Yehuda. It's good Rav Huna can fit with Rabbi Yehuda, because Rav Huna had said earlier, Rav Huna's opinion in the second version was that in a case where a person had bought this item and now he buys it again, you do not recite the Shehachiyanu bracha. And that would fit with Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda had said that if you inherited and now you bought, you do say the Shehachiyanu blessing. But if you bought before and now you bought again, then you would not recite the Shehachiyanu blessing. So that would fit with Rabbi Yehuda in the Brisa. Ella Rabbi Yochanan the Amar Kman. But who is Rabbi Yochanan going to follow? Again, Rabbi Yochanan had this most extreme view. He said that even if you bought one before, now you buy again, you still recite a Shachayanu a second time. You can recite a Shachayanu now. And how does that fit with the Brisa, where the Brisa spoke about a case where you initially you inherited, and now you bought again, you bought something, and that's where there's an argument. But it seems pretty clearly that if you bought before and now you're buying a second time, everyone seems to agree in the Brisa, you do not say Shachiyanu. And here we have Rabbi Yochanan, who's much later than the Brisa, and he's claiming you should say a Shachiyanu. So he doesn't fit with anyone. Like Rabbi Meir, but like Rabbi Yehuda. I'm like Rabbi Yochanan, who hadin. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I fit with them. How do I fit? Because who hadin de Rabbi Yehuda, kana v'chazav kana nami taraf leba. The same law would apply for Rabbi Yehuda if a person bought before and now he buys again the same item, similar item, and he would say, Nami taraf leba. You would still need to recite a shechiyanu. And this that they argue in the specific case of inheritance that he inherited, and that in the case where he inherited and then bought, that case they chose for a specific reason. To show the view, the strength of Reb Meir's view, even if a person bought v'yeshla, and he has from before through an inheritance, ein tzarich levarich, that you do not recite a shachiyanu. So it wanted to specifically pick a case of inheritance and then afterwards buying, first-time buyer. Inherited before, and now he's a first-time buyer, that even in that case, Reb Meir would say you do not recite a bracha. And for sure, in a case where you're a second-time buyer, you do not recite a shachiyanu, according to Reb Meir. And that's why they chose such a case. But really, Reb Yehuda would say that in a case of second-time buyer, there you would say a shachiyanu. It picked this case where it's a first-time buyer to show that Reb Meir says you do not recite a shachiyanu. But it could have, the same law would apply in a case of a second-time buyer. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says, my opinion fits with Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say that a second-time buyer doesn't say shechiyanu. He just says that a first-time buyer says shechiyanu. Doesn't mean to exclude a second-time buyer. Second-time buyer also says shechiyanu. He chose the case that he's explaining, that you have to say shechiyanu by a first-time buyer. That case is chosen because it's showing Reb Meir's view that even a first-time buyer, once inherited before, he still has it, you do not recite a shachiyanu. So that's the Gemara's answer to Rabbi Yochanan. That Rabbi Yochanan can fit with this brisa. The Gemara is not satisfied. The Gemara says, why don't they argue in the case of a second-time buyer? And that Reb Meir would say you don't need to say a shachiyanu. To show the extreme view of Rabbi Yehuda that even a second-time buyer recites a shachiyanu, that's quite extreme. Why don't we pick that case? Because that would be showing the other extreme, the extreme of Rabbi Yehuda, that you do need to recite a shachiyanu. Even though you bought such an item before, you would still need to say again shachiyanu on your second time buying. And even though you have the first item, you would say when you bought it before, you say a shachiyanu again. Let's pick that case. Let them choose such a case. And the Gemara answers, no, koyach de hetera adiflei, the power of leniency, it wants specifically to show Reb Meir's view that you do not need to recite a shachiyanu instead of choosing Reb Yehuda's case, which would show Reb Yehuda's extreme view. We'd rather show Reb Meir's extreme view, because Reb Meir's extreme view seems to be more exciting to him. It's more powerful. Why is it more powerful? So the term the Gemara uses is koyach de hetera adiflei. the power of leniency is more is better, it's more better for the Gemara to choose. Now, what does this mean? So the Gemara uses this term kayach de'atera adif in other cases. There are other Gemaras that mention this. Generally, it's used in a case where one rabbi says something is permissible and another rabbi says something is prohibited. The Gemara likes to emphasize the lenient view more than it likes to emphasize the strict view. Why does the Gemara like to emphasize the lenient view more? Because it's no big deal for a rabbi to say you're not allowed to do something. Very easy, because they don't have to worry. You're not allowed to do it. No, you can't do it. They don't have to worry, because to say something is prohibited, you're like you get yourself out of any problem, because you can't be. No one can ever tell you off. Why? You said something is prohibited, so if the thing is prohibited, it's prohibited. If it's not really prohibited, okay, so you stopped someone from doing something they could have done. But if you permit something, you need to be 100% sure that this thing is permissible. Otherwise, you can't go and permit it. That's a big, you have to have broad shoulders to permit something. So the Gemara likes to show the lenient view, because that means that you are sure of yourself. To be strict, it doesn't mean you're 100% sure. It means you're questionable. So it's easy to say something's prohibited, because if you're not sure, just prohibit it. But to say something is permitted, that means that you have broad shoulders and you're sure of yourself that this thing must be 100% permissible. Otherwise, you won't allow it. So that's koyach de'atera adif, that the Gemara likes to show the power of leniency, because it means that you're clear, you're definite in your clarity of this law. Because otherwise you would not be able to say it's permitted. To say something's prohibited could be even if you're not sure, you say it's prohibited. Say something's permitted, it means you're sure that it's permitted. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say we can see it from Hillel and Shammai. Most halachot go according to Hillel. Shammai is the machmir and Hillel is the mekel.
Yeah, but now, the thing is, the reason we follow Hillel is not because we believe Hillel knew the halacha better than Shammai. That you might think that, but that's not the reason. It could have been that way. In other words, it could have been that Hillel was always much more sure. You could have thought this, and Shammai always said strict because they weren't always 100% sure. But it's actually not so. We actually know that Shammai was sharper than Hillel. They were great scholars, but Shammai was even deeper. They were mechadedi tfei, it says. They were more sharp than the Hillel scholars. And don't minimize Hillel. Hillel were great scholars, but Shammai was actually more scholarly. So the reason why the halacha follows Hillel is not because of the koyach de'atera adif.
Hillel saw where you can approve a halacha that is easier for the people than Shammai's.
Hillel permitted certain things, but not because they knew the halacha better.
No, he didn't know the halacha better, but he found a point where he can let the people approve it.
He only disagreed, I think, on 3 things or 6 things. It was Beis Hillel who had lots of arguments with Beis Shammai.
Okay, fine.
So
Beis Shammai
looked for this. No. They had no differences between the two of them. And you can look in the introduction to the Gemara that I get that talks about this. It was the students.
Yeah, but even so. So the point that Ben is making is maybe you see from the fact that the halacha follows Beis Hillel versus Beis Shammai, that maybe that would be a source for this idea, and I'm trying to explain that it's not. So you don't have to. It doesn't matter if it's Hillel or Beis Hillel. I was using the terms interchangeably. But either way, even so, it says machad ditfei. We mean Beis Shammai was machad ditfei. It's not that Shammai himself was machad ditfei. It's the whole the school of Beis Shammai were more sharp. They were machad ditfei, and still the halacha followed Beis Hillel. And the reason for that had to do with it was a bas koil, there was a heavenly voice that came out that the halacha follows Beis Hillel, and we know that Beis Hillel was anvasini tfei. They were more humble. They would mention the view of Beis Shammai before their view, so they had more humility, which gives the understanding a little that they were more connected to straight up to Hashem with their humility. Then and they were able to get the essence of the halacha. But the point is that that the halacha follows them, but not because of their lenient. The leniency in their view was not the reason why the halacha follows them.
Right.
Rabbi.
That's a separate point. That the leniency is a separate point from the first point you were making. We certainly
What's the first point?
They're more lenient. Rabbi Smith, what was the first point you said in terms of why we follow them?
The reason because of a bas koil.
No, not that.
And humble. What?
Before all that, what was the point you were making? That we shouldn't think that we follow them because of what?
Because they're smarter and they're able to be lenient because they know the halacha clearer.
But
that's why they're lenient.
It goes into they're smarter. That was not the point. What I think the other point is, we don't go that way because it's easier. You know, Jews look for the outs. Well, we always follow him because if you go one with the other, one's a chumrah, the other is the hakel. The trouble
That's
is...
what I said.
Yitzchok,
More
could I say
people
something?
are willing to follow Hillel than to follow Shammai.
Could I mention something?
Again, I don't know that
changing times. Isn't it the changing times that causes us to become more lenient? It has nothing to do with a personal matter. It has to do with the times that we're moving into the changing times. Just as they say that things.
They were deciding it at a certain time. It has nothing to do.
I don't know about the changing times.
But the demands of the time that we are living in will cause us to have to become more lenient under certain instead of being more machmir, because machmir, it seems like
that doesn't
more
change
machmir
the
position
halacha.
tends to be, we have to make adjustments, and you cannot be machmir. In other words, this is,
okay, I hear you, Moshe. The thing is that's not the connected to the argument of Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. There are situations where that obligate someone to rely on more lenient views, which you have a point. There are certain scenarios someone might be in, or a certain situation that people, that come up that, someone might need to rely on a more lenient view. But the point is that that's not connected here. So what I was mentioning was koyach de hetera adif, is that there is a great benefit of being lenient, and not because people like it better, but it's because it shows that you know the law better. It's like a doctor that allows you to do certain things. It means he knows his field much more than, if he's serious, if he's honest with himself, and he's telling you you're able to eat this and you're able to go here and you can do that. It means that he really is very clear on what your health situation is. Another doctor might say, don't try to do that, don't go there, because he's being strict, because he doesn't want to, he's too nervous, he's not 100% sure that this will be safe for you. But the other doctor, who, if he's a real doctor and sincere about it, and he's telling you you can do this, it means that he's pretty confident, he's very confident that this is not going to affect you. He's 100% confident that this is not going to affect you in a negative way, and you can do this. You can go here. You can eat this food. You don't have to worry about. You can take this trip, and you don't have to worry. So in halacha, it works this similar way. That if a person is strict, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know the halacha clear. It could be that they're being strict because they want to cover the the doubts that they might have. But when a person is lenient, it means that he knows the halacha much clearer. And the Gemara likes to show the ability of the leniency more than it likes to show the strict view, because the kayach de hetera means that you know the halacha very clearly. So in this scenario, it is interesting that it shows this terminology here, because the case that we're talking about is a case where Reb Meir says, do not recite the bracha of Shechianu, and Reb Yehuda says you should recite the bracha Shechianu. So the Gemara could have said that Reb Yehuda's view is the more lenient view, because it's allowing you to say Shechianu even though it might be a bracha levatala. So you could question the Gemara, and a lot of the commentaries do. They ask, why is koyach de hetera adif a reason to show Reb Meir's view, where he says, do not say a shechianu? It would seem that the lenient view is Reb Yehuda's view, and therefore the Gemara specifically should have picked a case for Reb Yehuda to show Reb Yehuda's extreme view, that you can recite a shechianu, even though it might be a bracha levatala, it might be a bracha in vain, but you can say a shechianu. So one of the answers that the commentaries give is that the bracha shechianu is an obligation when a person is enjoying something from this world. You would feel obligated to recite this bracha. In other words, if you don't say the shechianu, it would seem that you're benefiting from the world without reciting a bracha. Now, this doesn't necessarily fit with the way we explained it earlier, that the bracha shechianu is more of a permissible bracha. But according to the way this commentary explains these words in this Gemara here, sort of follows another way of understanding that shechianu could be considered more of an obligation, and therefore, if Reb Meir says you do not recite the shechianu, he's actually the more lenient view, because Reb Yehuda would say you need to recite it because you're benefiting from this world, and Reb Meir says no, you don't need to recite it. So Reb Meir is the more lenient view. That's one way of answering the Gemara. Again, it doesn't really fit so perfectly with how we explained earlier that shechianu is more of a permissible bracha, not an obligation. So another way of explaining this Gemara of Kayach de Teira Adif is just the term that the Gemara used here. It's a borrowed term. It's called a Shem HaMushal. It's not really the common way of using this Kayach de Teira Adif term. And really what the Gemara means is it wants to emphasize the view of Reb Meir. It's more interested in emphasizing that view. It used the term of Kayach de Teira Adif, but really it's emphasizing the view of Reb Meir that that there are cases where you don't need to recite a shechianu, and it specifically wanted to emphasize that view. Okay, we're going to have to stop here.